Hello, Connecticut Library community. This is Kimberly Poe, your children and young adult library consultant, here to go over some changes that are going to be coming to the 2021 summer reading data collection process. So the state is going to be moving to an outcome-based data collection approach. So I'm going to take a moment to talk to you about how to submit outcome-based data results and why we want them. So Connecticut has 169 towns. And within those 169 towns, Connecticut has 191 public libraries. If I were a betting person, I'd be willing to bet that Connecticut runs 191 different summer reading programs, but the Connecticut State Library only submits one summer reading report. So in the past, the process has gone as thus. Libraries organized and ran summer reading programs. Each library structured their program differently, collecting data in different ways, if they collected data at all. The Division of Library Development sent out a method to collect said data, and the information was compiled and sent to the Institute of Museum and Library Services, also known as IMLS. The compilation portion was difficult because some libraries counted books read, some counted minutes read, some counted days read, some didn't count at all, some used a game board, some didn't count. They didn't count anything. They just encouraged participation. Therefore, creating that report was difficult, but also confusing because you didn't get a snapshot of Connecticut as a whole. So why do we send this information to IMLS? Funding from IMLS allows the state to purchase a subscription to Read Squared, which is the digital platform that we use to track reading. And funding from IMLS also allows the state to purchase membership to the Collaborative Summer Library Program, also known as CSLP. Now, CSLP is what chooses our theme. So this year's theme is Tales and Tales. We've had the space theme, we've had the world theme, we've had like dig into reading for anyone who's been around long enough to remember that. So CSLP does that. They also put together lists of books, program ideas, display ideas. They purchase and create the graphics that we use and banners and posters. They provide a bunch of incentive prizes that we can buy that all fit in the theme. So some folks might be thinking, I don't use Read Squared and I don't use the CSLP manual, so this isn't important, but it is, right? So based off of the summer reading reports, the summer reading info that I've collected for 2020, 42% of libraries used Read Squared and 55% of libraries reported that they used the CSLP materials. So that's a lot of libraries that would have to spend hundreds of dollars to access this material, pulling that funding from somewhere else that probably needs it just as vitally. So it's really important that we do the best we can when reporting back to IMLS what the state of Connecticut is doing with their funds, not what 191 individual libraries are doing with their funds. So what are the changes that are coming? I told you that some libraries reported number of books read, number of minutes read. No more of that. The state of Connecticut is no longer going to be asking for books read, minutes read, days read, pages read. We're not going to be asking for any of that. But I want to take a moment to remind you that the state is asking for certain material for our purposes, for what we report to IMLS. But you in your individual libraries also create reports, right? You create reports and collect data and information for your board. You collect data and information for your first selectman or your mayors. You collect data and information for the superintendent and for your school system. Please continue to use this summer to collect whatever information you need for your individual library. This data that I am talking about is what's being sent to me at the Division of Library Development to report to IMLS. So think of this as two individual reports. If your library is really passionate and really finds a great way to use number of minutes read, if that really works for your library and your community, collecting that data and using it in some way, continue to collect it. But I am going to walk you through why I want the information that I want and how I want it. So, which leads us beautifully into why are we making these changes? So the first concern that we have up here is summer reading with regards to equitable access and treatment. So there are 3 quotes on the screen right now that were made by 3 teenage boys when asked about their experience in relation to their time in the library, time that they spent in their library. These quotes came from Project Ready. It is an online racial equity training, and the link is right here in the slide. But I'm gonna read through these quotes. I wasn't a bad student, but I would always get disciplined in the library. The librarians, I guess they didn't like me because I just talked too much. I got disciplined, like he said, for talking. Also moving around a lot. I couldn't sit still, always going somewhere and looking at something or touching something. If I could have my own library, I wouldn't want it to be quiet. I just find it difficult staying silent in the library. I like to be able to talk. If I'm reading a book and I find something interesting, I want to be able to tell my friends about it and don't want to be shushed the whole time and get in trouble and things like that. So these are, you know, they can be pretty distressing quotes to some folks. But these are real life experiences from 3 teenage boys with regards to their relationship with the library. If this is how these boys feel about the library, if these quotes were pulled from their direct thoughts about the library, what does the amount of minutes reading and what does the amount of books read matter, right? Are we getting these 3 boys to participate in our summer reading program? Does how many books did you read over the summer help us deal with their feelings toward the library based off of these quotes that they gave? And I can't answer these questions for your individual libraries, which is why I'm going to take a moment to reiterate. You can collect whatever data you want for your library. But from my perspective, where I'm looking at the entire state, I want this addressed. I want these quotes addressed before I want to focus on how many books they were able to read over the summer. This is a quote pulled from a U.S. News article. The U.S. News article was a summary and observation of a study from the Yale Child Study Center on preschool teachers and how those preschool teachers interacted with preschool aged children. So the conclusion of at least the first part of this study, 135 teachers were shown a video of 2 Black children, a Black boy and a Black girl, and 2 white children, a white boy and a white girl. And the 135 teachers were told to watch the video and look for and identify bad behavior or misbehaving students, to sound less terrifying about it. So the Yale Child Study Center was able to use eye tracking technology to see who the teachers spent most of their time looking at when waiting for someone to perform bad behavior. And the children spent more time looking at the Black children, particularly the Black boy, than they did at the white children. So yes, this is information about preschool teachers, not early literacy librarians or librarians in general. But that's because there isn't, as far as I know, and based off of my research, there aren't as in-depth studies as this one on school or public librarians, I'm going to say, because preschools and schools have their own libraries. There is not as much information on the interaction between librarians and children and teens as there are teachers and folks in the school system as children and teens. But if preschool teachers are spending more time waiting for Black children to misbehave, then I can guarantee you librarians are spending more time waiting for Black children to misbehave than white children. And while that 3 or 4-year-old child might not understand what's going on, and it might not affect consciously their want to go to story time, and their want to participate in 1,000 books before kindergarten, and their want to come into the library, period, I guarantee you their parents notice. I guarantee you their parents have thoughts and feelings about it. And for every one parent that says something, there are hordes more who aren't saying anything. They're just walking away from the library as a whole. And if they're walking away from the library as a whole because they're not made to feel comfortable there, they're made to feel like their children aren't welcome there, then what does that mean for summer reading? Does it matter how many books that parent reads to that child? For my purposes, looking at Connecticut as a whole and the summer reading program as a whole, I need to know who feels comfortable, how comfortable they feel. And that is what my future survey, or that's what the survey that I'm going to be talking to you about is going to address. So the next reason why we're migrating to the way data is going to be collected, because we want to educate the whole child. So for anyone who has gone through any type of early literacy training with regards to librarianship, you might have heard of Every Child Ready to Read. Every Child Ready to Read is an educational philosophy that states you can't, in order to prepare your child for school, in order to prepare your child to learn to read, it is important that you sing, talk, read, write, and play. Basically telling us that preparing a child for reading is about more than books. It is about how one person interacts with that child. It is about what that child hears. It is about how that child is interacted with. All of those things are equally important. It is equally important that we play as it is that we read. It is equally important that we sing as it is that we read. It is equally important that we talk as it is that we read. And while I can't swear to this, I feel very strongly that the it's not just about the books philosophy carries on past 5 years old, carries on past the every child's ready to read pedagogy, right? I truly believe that just handing a book to a child will not guarantee that they will read it. It will not guarantee that they will comprehend it. It will not guarantee that they will learn anything from it. It will just guarantee that words scroll across their eyes. So it's about more than books. And then I also believe that it is important to include all learning abilities. That is another reason why we are switching to outcome-based data results. So this is a quote, this is a passage taken from the CDC, which explains about the difficulties that a child who suffers from learning disorders may have just as a whole. So I see, and I have seen in the results that I get when I collect summer data, that a lot of libraries count number of books read, right? I have absolutely nothing against counting the amount of books read. I'm going to take a moment again to remind everybody that for your own personal internal reports, for the reports that you share with your board, with your first selectman, with your superintendent, I encourage you to count whatever it is that you want to count and to report whatever it is that you want to report. But should a child who is able to read 5 books a week, that is an exaggeration, but let's make that more realistic. Should a child who is able to read 1 book a week be rewarded and shrouded in accolades more than a child who can only read one book over a 2-month period. Because that's what we're doing, right? When we are counting and awarding based off of the amount of books that have been read, that's what we're doing. When we do a read and bead and we give kids beads for every book that they finish, and then kids come into the library to use the computer, to use a program, and one kid only has 2 beads on their necklace and they're sitting next to another kid, maybe also in their class, who has 12 beads on their necklace. What is that child's picking up, and what are we telling them accidentally and subconsciously? And what might be sticking with that child that they don't even realize is affecting them, all because maybe they aren't as strong of a reader as the person that they're sitting next to, or maybe because they're not lucky enough to have parents who can help them with their reading. And then in addition to that, let's migrate away from a child who possibly has learning disorders. But what if English isn't your first language and your local library primarily has books in English? What if you are more comfortable reading in Portuguese, or you're more comfortable reading in French, or you're more comfortable reading in Spanish, or you're more comfortable reading in whatever? You are automatically at a disadvantage for what is being collected via the summer reading program. Not to mention, you're not taking into consideration the whole child approach. That child's learning isn't taking the whole child approach into consideration. So I hope that explains, and I hope that paints the picture that I've had in my mind for a very long time with regards to what data is collected and what quote unquote counts. So what do we want to know? These are the questions that are going to be on a survey that we will be asking the libraries to submit to their patrons. Their age. So these age ranges are broken down in accordance with the way that IMLS breaks down their ages when collecting statewide data through our data coordinators. So these ages match up to that, the statewide data collection, for the sake of consistency. So that's why the ages are the way that they are, even though we know that developmentally those can be broken down a bit more. And then what we want to know is, do you feel welcomed at the library? This goes back to the quote from those 3 boys. I do not want to speak for them, but I know that if that was the quote that I was giving to someone who asked me about my experience at the library, my answer would be no, I don't feel welcomed at the library. I enjoy taking part in library activities offered this summer. Goes back to the whole child approach. It's more than just reading, but those library activities can include reading. They can include a book club. They can include anything. Book discussions. I learned something because of activities offered this summer. That, in my opinion, is one of the key questions of this survey. Did you learn? Did you learn? I'm sure if we all remember or think back to our time in school, there were a lot of books that we were handed that maybe we didn't like read. Maybe we skimmed, maybe we read the Spark Notes, maybe we did something else. That's why the important thing isn't how much you read. It isn't important what you read. It's important that you learned something from what you read. So that's why we have that question. I got help from the library this summer, which might include finding a book. It might include reading. It might be something else. It might be something with regards to social and emotional learning, because we have no idea what the summer of 2021 is going to look like with regards to COVID, social distancing, and what the effect of all of this is ultimately having on these kids. And in the summer, they don't have their teachers there anymore. They might not have the supports that they've had in school, so they've got us. I plan to take part in library activities after the summer. So has the library had the opportunity to make enough of an effect on a child or a family or a teen that they want to come back to the library, even when they're not earning beads for every book that they read, even if they're not earning scratch tickets for every book that they read or every program that they attend? The library has left enough of an impression on them that they want to come back. I look forward to visiting the library again. So again, I mean, these questions might have to be adjusted a bit when we see what 2021 is going to look like. While I plan to take part in library activities, might be activities that happen in the building, or it might be activities that happen virtually or outside of the building. I look forward to visiting the library again. Connects to I felt welcome at the library. Do you plan to come back? Have we left enough of a good impression that you plan to come back? And then the final question is one that is of great importance, and the true effect of this final question might not be seen until a couple years out, but this is the first time I participated in the summer reading program. If you get 100 surveys back and 100 people answered no to this question, this is not the first time they participated in summer reading, then what that says is that it's probable that you were not providing services to your entire community. You are providing services to a piece of the community. You are not helping to prevent the summer slide for all of the kids in the community. You are helping to prevent the summer slide for like a small chunk of people in the community. And the answer to that question may affect the way a library chooses to do outreach. It might open up their eyes to who's not coming to the library, you know, who are we not seeing? So this is a sample. This is of what the ultimate data collection sheet will look like. So again, in the past, some folks might remember submitting their summer reading data in a SurveyMonkey, but the state data coordinator collects data in a format similar to this, and we are looking for consistency. We are looking to put all branches of, or all the different sections of DLD on the same plane. So that is why we are having these items submitted via Excel spreadsheet. And there were also occasions where folks couldn't remember if they submitted the SurveyMonkey. You don't necessarily get an email back saying you've submitted it all. So there is a chain of ownership that comes from emailing these Excel spreadsheets back and forth. So that's just another reason why we did that. But you'll see we ask for the basic information, and your library name is actually going to be a drop down this year. We ask for your name, email, and phone number. And the name that is on the sheet, the name that submits this information, that is going to be the person that's going to get access to the CSLP access code. So just to know that off the bat. And then we ask for you to basically tally up and plug in your survey results into the spreadsheet. On the second half of the screen, you'll see a strongly agree and agree. And then what you'll see after that is like disagree and strongly disagree. It just got cut off. So just to give you an idea, this might change a bit between now and the summer of 2021, but it is basically going to look like this. So then some questions and some concerns that I anticipate about this whole process, right? So one person, when I presented this information, asked, well, how do we know? How do we know that it's not the parent who is filling this out? Like, how do we know any of what we know with regards to this survey? How accurate is it? And my answer to that question is kind of like asking another question, but not really. So with the summer reading program, right? So let's say you are using a paper log and a child comes in and they have 19 book titles on that paper log. We have no idea if that child actually read all 19 of those books. We have no idea. We have no idea if they read them. We have no idea if they looked at them. We have no idea if they just wrote them down so that they could get raffle tickets. We don't know. We are taking them at their word. We are working on the honor system. The survey is going to be the same. We have to trust that the answers that are put on our surveys are how our patrons truly feel. The same with anytime we are soliciting information from our library community. There's also something to be said for any parts of the survey that people skip, particularly if you're using a paper survey. If someone doesn't answer the I felt welcomed at my library, that can be telling. It might not be, but it can be telling. So that's just a response to something that's not up here on this board or on this screen. But so let's sort of go through these, right? So the questions have been designed to generate data that will demonstrate the value and impact of your summer program. You can use the results you receive to demonstrate that your patrons are learning from the activities offered and getting help from the library, which is something that libraries are so used to saying. So often people who are well-meaning but non-library users are sort of like, but doesn't everyone just get what they need off of Amazon? Doesn't everyone just learn the answers to all their questions through Google? No. The results of this data will help you quantify your response for that. A survey is intentionally brief to keep all questions on one page and encourage patrons to respond to them. Libraries are welcome to add their own questions to the survey, but your questions should come after and should not replace the pre-prepared questions. So while we are currently battling a global pandemic, while we are currently being impacted by COVID, and that is keeping some people out of our libraries, that is keeping some library doors closed, that has really shaken up and changed the way that we do our jobs. These survey questions and the results are supposed to help us with longevity. If we ask a different set of questions every single year based off of what's happening that year, we will not have any longevity of data or information. So feel free to add your own questions if there is something unique that you want to know about your library at the moment. The questions that we have generated and compiled for the use of the summer reading data collection will help us with regards to longevity and verbalizing our value. So please feel free to collect your survey data however works best for you, either using a paper survey or placing your surveys online. You can collect the answers to these questions however you want, whatever makes you happy. But you will have to plug all of the answers into that spreadsheet that I showed you on a previous slide. One of which that I did not point out is we will be asking how many people participated in your summer reading program. You were able to identify and define participation however you want. If you say they participated because they signed up, then okay, that's how they participated. If you say they only participated after they've completed at least one activity, be it one book read, 5 minutes tracked, one program attended. Again, because there are 191 different libraries who run their programs 191 different ways, I can't give you 191 answers. So however you determine participated, that's on you. So we will be asking for the amount of people who participated. So please remember, this is the fourth block. Please remember that the survey has been designed to obtain feedback from the people, the early learners, children, teens, and adults who took part in the summer program. So a few tips, parents are totally allowed to help younger children fill out the form, but just try to encourage the parents to let the child respond. And there will be a section on this survey for, is there anything else you want to tell us? There will be an open-ended opportunity for more information to be shared from patron to librarian, but we really, to the best of our ability, the 6-month-old isn't going to be able to tell us anything, but by the time a child is 4 or 5, they can tell us if they are happy in the space that they are in, and they can tell us if they learned something, be it about colors, shapes, or dinosaurs. So really just encourage that to the best of your ability. You can put a box out or a folder, ask the respondents to fill out the form and leave it in a designated spot before they leave the library. Maybe you can hand these out at programs that you run and ask people quickly before you leave, would you mind just answering this survey? And we encourage you to start asking people, I said about halfway through, but 2 to 3 weeks, like once your program has really started to run, you don't want to hand out this survey on day 1 because no one can answer your question because your program just started. But 2 or 3 weeks into your summer program, depending on how long it is, because that's also very different, you're going to want to start rolling out rolling out this survey. Leave some at your desk for people to view and inquire about. Hand them out at programs, hand them out at book clubs. Just like do the best you can. And if you need help coming up with ideas, please reach out to me and I'm happy to help you. If possible, plan to collect at least 100 survey responses. Now, 100 survey responses sounds like a lot, but remember, the one survey is for birth to adult. So collect them from your adult department, collect them from your teen department if that's separate from your children's department. The conventional wisdom in the data gathering world is that 100 responses for a survey is the magic number for being able to assert that you have reliable results. Because within that 100, there are going to be some that you're like, this doesn't make any sense. But if you can get 100 responses, so that's why we ask for 100. But if you can't get 100 responses or don't have 100 total participants, that's all right. Your data is just as valuable as another library's data. We would like the goal to be 100, but if it's not, it's not. You know, just please try your hardest and put oomph behind this. And remember, only the libraries that turned in the summer survey will obtain access to information for the following year's CSLP manual. That is the same as it has always been. You are required to submit that survey, submit the survey by the deadline in order to obtain the following year's CSLP manual. We are keeping that the same. So one of the last things I want to say is to keep in mind that the point of children's librarianship and summer reading as well is to create lifelong learners and encourage lifelong learning. And that requires more than just handing a child a book and sending them on their way. And again, my name is Kimberly Poe, Children and Young Adult Consultant. Here is all my contact information along with a couple of helpful links. I thank you for your time. Look forward to embarking on this new journey with everyone. And if anyone has any questions, thoughts, or concerns, please feel free to send me an email or call me at the office. Thank you very much.